was in the days of Noah, so shall it be when the Son of Man returns. And so last week we talked about how bad the earth was, how bad a shape it was in. If you weren't here, I'm just going to just recap it real quick. We did talk about the giants, or what would be more accurately referred to in the Hebrew as the Nephilim. The Nephilim was a race. It was a genetic race of beings created when angels came down from heaven and procreated with the daughters of men. Again, don't ask us how that happens. It just happens, okay? If you want the details, a little more detail, you can watch last week's on our Facebook OC group. But what happened was this. When you look at the main definition of the Nephilim, it really means they were a tyrant bully race. You want to talk about true racism? They were a being that, yes, was far superior probably to humans in intellect and strength. They were probably warriors. And you want to talk about bullying the human race? They probably did, from what I can understand definition-wise. And the earmark of the planet before the flood is this, is that the whole earth is filled with violence and corruption. Corruption at every level and violence at every level. And, we talk about tyrants, and these Nephilim were called men of old, men of renown. Now, what does that mean? Men of old means they're historical figures, and renown means they're famous. And so I went through a list of tyrants that you and I would recognize, people like Mao Zedong and Adolf Hitler, Stalin, and we added up how many years they were in power and how many people they killed in their time in power in their regimes. And then what we did was we multiplied it, because these Nephilim would have been in power, and overseeing things much longer, because they would have lived longer and they would have destroyed many, many more people. Is that exactly how it happened? I don't know, because, we don't have so many details. But at least it gives us some sort of idea. And sometimes that's all we can get, is an idea of what it was like. And I'll tell you what, even though things are not great on this planet right now, at least right now, they are better than they were pre-flood. All right, I would not have wanted to live in those days. So, will it get there again? Yes, but we're not there yet. So, it was bad. And so what happened was the Lord found Noah. Noah found grace in the sight of the Lord. And the Lord basically said, I'm going to use this one to preserve mankind and bring a flood on the earth. And because there's so much violence, I'm going to start over. And so he called Noah. And we're going to begin here in Genesis 7. We're going to cover a lot of ground. We're going to cover Genesis 7, 8, and half of chapter 9. All right, so we're going to be rolling through this thing. And let me say this before we get started into chapter 7. There is a lot of information about the flood out there, okay? And I encourage you to go do your own research, all right? I don't have the time in these, sessions we have to go through all that's out there. There's many plausible theories that go with the flood, like, and we'll cover some of this, but it's like, did the flood actually cover Mount Everest? Where did the floodwaters go? How did they recede? These types of questions. And there's lots of people that have done a lot of interesting research. Am I here to peg each one of those as the absolute truth? No. But it's worth your time to investigate. And the flood was a total catastrophe. I can't say the word, cataclysmic catastrophe on the planet. And a catastrophe of that nature can do a lot of things, like even change landscape. I was looking at a little research, and Mount St. Helens erupted in 1980. All right? It carved a canyon called Engineers Canyon. And there's a little stream now in the middle of it. Now, most people would say that little stream over a gazillion years eroded away the canyon. That canyon was formed in 9 hours from floodwaters. Landscapes can change pretty quick. So this flood, it looks like it, when it receded, it could have done a lot of things and changed a lot of landscape even. So these catastrophic events, whether it's Satan's judgment, whether it's the flood, they can create these different, geographic landscapes that we see today. So very interesting. So do your own research on that. Again, I'm not here to peg which one is true or not, but it's worth looking into, okay? Now, beginning in verse 1 of chapter 7, it says this, "And the Lord said unto Noah," I want you to really listen to what he says. This is an important statement. "Come thou and all thy house into the ark, for thee have I seen righteous before me in this generation." That's quite a statement. "For you have I seen righteous before me in this generation." And when I read this, it reminded me of, I believe it was Peter in Acts chapter 2:4. He said this, "Turn yourselves from this wicked and toward generation." Save yourself. And each of us in our generation wants to be found this way. Righteous in our generation. "Well done, my good and faithful servant. Come, enter into your rest." The ark, in a way, was a place of rest. It wasn't necessarily fun to be on there, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but it would have been a place of rest from the judgment to come. But he found Noah righteous before him in his generation. I take that as a personal application and challenge. Will I be found that way? Verse 2, "Of every clean beast thou shalt take to thee by sevens, the male and his female, and of beasts that are not clean by two, the male and his female." Now, this is an interesting scripture here to me. So far, and I went and looked back, I don't know scripturally what delineates a clean from unclean animal yet. Now, I know that in the law of Moses, he gives the parameters for that. Well, Moses ain't here yet, okay, at this point in history. So how he knows which are clean or unclean, I don't know. Now, the narrative always goes 2 by 2, 2 by 2, 2 by, all the animals 2 by 2, right? So that would mean there would be 2 males, 2 females. So there's actually 4 of each animal, all right? Type of animal. But this is saying, no, 7 by 7 of the clean, 2 by 2 of the unclean. So the clean animals would go in, there'd be 7 males, 7 females. I have a thought. This is not like, don't take this to the bank, I just have a thought. There would still be animal sacrifices to God. And you're only going to do that with a clean animal. You might need a few more of those. That's just a thought I had off the top of my head. Okay, take it for what you will. Okay, of the fowls also the air by sevens, the male and the female, to keep seed alive upon the face of the earth. For yet 7 days, and I will cause it to rain upon the earth 40 days, 40 nights. And every living substance that I have made will I destroy from off the face of the earth. And Noah did according unto all the Lord commanded him. And Noah was 600 years old, and the flood of waters was upon the earth. Now I want to stop right here, and I want to shift gears for just 1 second. I touched on this a little bit last week, but I want to get into a little bit more this week. That is, I want to establish why I believe the flood was a global flood, or what they call a universal flood, and not a localized flood. There is a camp that thinks it's a localized flood, meaning that it only was a flood in what they call Middle Eastern cosmology. That's just a fancy word for saying the Middle Eastern world, because this is all focused on the Middle Eastern world, Mesopotamia and those types of places, what we consider the Middle East, and maybe a few more areas, north, south, east, and west, okay? Well, there's a few issues with that. And let's talk about that. There's a few geographic issues, and there's scriptural issues, and there's issues with the declaration of the flood with that as well. So let's talk about that, or how God declared the flood would come. The first thing is this: a local flood, let's think about it, would make the building of the ark unnecessary. No, I mean, God could easily say, Noah, take you and your sons, your wife, your sons' wives, Go up north to the Ararat mountain range, okay, which is up somewhere Turkey, Armenia, southern Russia. Go up there, those high mountains. This whole valley here, I'm just going to flood it, and everybody in there. But just go up there, wait it out, be okay. It would have made sense to do rather than build an entire ark. Okay? There's universal language used. Let's go to, I'm going to skip around here, Genesis 7:19. Let's listen to the language. And the waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth, and all the high hills that were under the whole heaven were covered. What's heaven? It's just the expanse right now that we see in this terminology. Okay? It's just the expanse we see. So it's just the blue sky. All the earth under the whole heaven would be flooded with water. That does not, to me, point to a localized flood. Genesis 7:22. Talking about who is going to perish in the flood. All in whose nostrils was the breath of life. The breath of life is what God breathed into Adam, and he became a living soul. Every human being has the breath of life of God within them. That is how they exist. That is what makes them a living soul. So to say that it's a localized flood, there might be other individuals, unless just at this time there was not anybody outside of that, but I don't think that was the case. Mankind had been around a while and had spread out. Anybody that had the breath of life that was living would die in this flood, not just localized Middle Eastern people. And then Genesis 8:9, talking about when the dove went out. But the dove found no rest for the sole of her foot. She returned unto him in the ark, for the waters were on the face of the whole earth. Remember, the whole means the entirety of something. So what happens is a lot of times people, if they believe in the localized flood theory, what they have to do is they say this whole book, this whole Genesis is only about Middle Eastern society. The problem with that is that Noah had 3 sons. And the Bible's very clear that all 3, for all of us in this room and every human being on the planet from the flood, descend from one of those 3 sons. And if there was somebody else left on the earth, we could have descended from them. Everybody died. Now, if somehow the whole population was only in that little region, then sure, a localized flood. But even geographically, that does not make sense. I want you to think about something. You know, water, it forms to whatever its container is. You know, this is like a water bottle. And so you think like a bowl, like take it like a big bowl, okay? What do you think? If you have a localized flood, what do you have to have? A bowl. You're going to have a valley with mountain ranges around it that won't let the water out. The problem was that this wasn't just rain. This was also the fountains of the deep were opened up. The earth is still one large mass. So the fountains of the deep in the ocean are going to have to come up, flood the coastlines, then come inland. All right? Now, I'm not sure exactly where inland is for these people, but it's not just going to stay in one little area. Water, unless there's a container to hold it in, it flattens out. Okay? So that also geographically does not make sense in my mind for a localized flood. The flood also, the Bible also says this, and we'll get to this, is that all mountaintops were covered with water up to 15 cubits. That's 22 feet. If mountaintops are covered 22 feet in water, you got no more bowl to hold anything in. You see how, it's just geographically, it will not take shape there. Here's a good point. Remember, God promised he would not bring another flood upon the earth to destroy the earth. If this was a local flood, then God's broken his promise many times. Because there's been many floods that have killed many people, has there not been? But they're local floods. They're localized floods. We know that God has never flooded the entire planet again since this. Let's see. Now, then let me read this. We can go to another Bible reference here. Look, why am I covering this? Because these are things you need to know. These are things that are important to understand how God did things, and we have to be able to prove it from Scripture. That's why I gave you those scriptures, and then it's also helpful to come to some others. Let's go to Psalm 104, start in verse 5, talking about God, who laid the foundations of the earth, that it should not be removed forever. Thou coverest it with the deep as with a garment. The waters stood above the mountains. At thy rebuke they fled, at the voice of thy thunder they hasted away. So that's a recount of the flood. Again, covered everything. So I really see this as a global, universal flood, not a localized one. Now let's keep reading on the flood account here. And I'm going to read, and here's what I'm going to do. This is a lot of ground to cover. I'm going to just commentate as we go. But I want to ask a question real quick. Who can tell me how long Noah and his family were on the ark? Just like that. 40 days and 40 nights. Is that what you think? How long? $378 days. 378 days on that ark. I want to paint a picture for you. He's got a big ark. He's got his 3 sons, their wives, his wife. A lot of animals. This ark, remember we talked about it last week? The roof only has a 1.5 foot opening all around. That's the only light and ventilation coming in. You've got a lot of animals, a lot of food storage in there. You got to go to the bathroom somewhere. And here's the thing. You know that the whole planet is being killed. This is not a fun experience. Just to bring in reality. I was talking with Scotty Ohashi this week, and he brought up a great point. He talked about how much he dislikes, and I think I really dislike it too now, these cartoons of Noah and the Ark. You know, he's like on this boat, and he's got this beard, and he's happy, and he's smiling, and there's giraffes sticking their head out, and it's just a very happy time. It was not a happy time. You think a COVID lockdown is bad? 378 days in an ark. You don't know what's going on. You've never seen rain before. The earth is flooded with water, and you're just trusting God. That's faith. Did he do it? Yes. Are we thankful he did it? Yes. Was he obedient to God? Yes. But I don't think it was the best year of Noah's life, or his sons, or his daughter-in-laws, or his wife. That's my speculation. Okay? And really those kind of cartoonish things, I understand we try to make bridges for children. I get that. But it kind of makes a mockery at the history of it. A lot of people don't take us seriously because we think, man, they think of Noah's Ark and they think a little picture, and then somewhere in the back there's a rainbow. This is not how it happened. They don't take it seriously. Oh, also on the global flood thing, I know I'm kind of bouncing around here. There's over 40 ancient historical texts that also point to a universal global flood. Many civilizations wrote in their history books about a universal flood on the earth, part of their history. So, not that I consider those inspired, but 40 historical ancient manuscripts that all are pointing to one historic event is, that's pretty good. It's pretty good evidence. Okay, back to the Bible here. Verse 7, and Noah went in, and his sons and his wife, his sons' wives with him into the ark, because the waters of the flood, of the clean beasts, the beasts that are not clean, fowls, and everything that creeps upon the earth. There went in 2 and 2 unto Noah into the ark, the male and the female, as God had commanded Noah. And it came to pass after 7 days that the waters of the flood were upon the earth. So he went in, and his family just waited there for 7 days. And you know what happened? Nothing. But God told him to go in, so he went in. And I want you to notice something. From the time Noah's name has been mentioned in Genesis 6, all the way through this, Noah never says anything. There's never a conversation. I'm not saying there wasn't one, but it's not recorded. It's just God said do this and he did it. Diane, come on. He was talking to Noah. It came to pass after 7 days that the waters of the flood were upon the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, now here's the dates we got to look at. The second month, now this is a Jewish calendar, in the second month, in the 10th day. I'm sorry, 17th day of the month. The same day were all the fountains of the deep, great deep, broken up, and the windows of heaven were open. So they entered the ark in the second month on the 10th day. They waited for a week. After 7 days, rain came, and so that came on the second month on the 17th day. The rains came and the great deep broke up. A lot of times we miss the part. We know that there was rain, 40 days and nights of rain. We also forget that the fountains of the deep were opened up. Okay? There's literally, have you guys ever been like a spring, like down in Florida or something, and you get over that spring and that water's just shooting up as you, okay, well, out in the ocean, that's out there too. There's a lot of water. Actually, I Googled it right before I came. There's as much water inside the earth as there is in the oceans themselves. Inside the earth, there's a lot of water. Lots. Tons. Incomprehensible amounts of water. Okay? So those fountains of the deep were released too. So there's water coming, groundwater coming up, okay? And there's rain coming down. And the rain was upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. And the selfsame day entered Noah and Shem and Ham and Japheth, the sons of Noah, and Noah's wife, and the 3 wives of his sons with them into the ark. They and every beast after his kind, and all the cattle after their kind, and every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth after his kind, every fowl of his kind, every bird of every sort. Now, one thing that some people say, you may want to do this research yourself, is, how did they fit every species on there? Well, they didn't. Take, for example, dog breeding. With dog breeding, over the course of 100, 200 years, they can breed new species of dogs. Okay, that's not evolution, all right? That's just husbandry, if you will. Now, what probably was most likely scenario was they took, certain classes in. So, like, they took dogs in, let's just say a wolf, but, the saying is that all these dogs, they come from a wolf type of thing. I know I'm not being very scientific here. But little adaptations are made, and that's not out of the scope of creation. That's not evolution. And so they may have taken a certain, what they call after their kind. I forget what they call that in the order. It's not like the species, but there's you have like horses, and there's different types of horses. So after the flood, different types of things did develop, perhaps. That's one thought on it, because there's no way you could fit every animal species into this boat. It's not big enough. That's one thought when it says after his kind, after his kind, after their kind. And they went in unto Noah into the ark, 2 and 2 of all flesh, wherein is the breath of life. And they that went in male and female of all flesh, as God had commanded, and the Lord shut him in. You know how many doors were on the ark? One. One way in, one way out. I told you thought COVID lockdowns were something. Okay, and the flood was 40 days upon the earth, and the waters increased and bare up the ark. It was lifted up above the earth. And the waters prevailed and were increased greatly upon the earth, and the ark went upon the face of the waters. And the waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth, and all the high hills that were under the whole heaven were covered. 15 cubits upward did the waters prevail, the mountains were covered. Again, so that's 15 cubits is about 22 feet above the mountaintops. You say, is that Mount Everest? Depends on who you ask. Here's all I know. all the mountaintops were covered. Some people think that Mount Everest, in the receding was formed. I wasn't there. And it's a speculation of geologists of anything. But I know whatever hills were there, whatever that looked like, they were covered in 22 foot of water. And that actually would allow, 22 foot of water would allow enough space, because, the ark, is a big, big boat. It's going to sink down in the water some. It would allow enough space that it wouldn't crash into the mountains if it, passed over them during this flood. And all flesh died that moved upon the earth, both of the fowl, of cattle, of beasts, creeping thing that creeps upon the earth, and every man, all in whose nostrils was the breath of life, of all that was in the dry land, died. It appears that fish survived. Because all that was in the dry land, I think fish could have survived, the flood, more water. And every living substance was destroyed, which is upon the face of the ground, both man, the cattle, the creeping things, the fowl of the heaven, and they were destroyed from the earth. And Noah only remained alive, and they that were with him in the ark. And the waters prevailed upon the earth 150 days. So it rained 40 days and nights, but once the flood reached flood stage, it just stayed that way. For another 110 days, I believe is how it goes. So let me go through. I got a little chart here. Well, do I want to get there yet? Yeah. So how this would work out is this. The rain would have stopped the third month on the 27th of that month. Okay? The rain would have stopped on the third month on the 27th day after 40 days and nights of rain. Then for another 110 days, they're just floating. Put yourself in Noah's shoes. That's faith. Told me to build an ark, I built an ark. Told me it would rain, and here's the flood, yes. Everybody I know is gone except these people in the boat with me. Somehow God's what is he going to do now? There's really not a vision for this flood in the sense that God's saying, here's when it's going to end, or it's even going to end. Just get on the boat. Am I going to live on this boat the rest of my life, God? Are we just going to start a civilization on the boat? What do we do? What's going to happen? Who knows what could have gone through his head? But for 110 days, he's floating. Just floating. But he's not off the ark in 110 days. He's just floating for 110 days. Chapter 8, verse 1. And God remembered Noah. Now, doesn't mean he forgot about him. This word remember in Hebrew is more like God did something on his behalf. Okay, it's more like I'm going to move on your behalf. So God remembered Noah and every living thing and all the cattle that was with him on the ark, and God made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters assuaged. The fountains of the deep and the windows of heaven were stopped, and the rain from heaven was restrained, and the waters returned from off the earth continually. So this did not happen overnight. It takes a long time for that amount of water to drain out. Where'd the water go? I think back into the earth. Yeah, Pastor Breen. I think that is my hypothesis. I think it went back into the earth. To me, that makes the most sense. Some people say that God changed the landscape and moved tectonic plates and everything, and mountains raised up and valleys were made and the water was able to settle on all this. I don't know about all that. But to me, it makes most sense that the fountains of the deep just turned into a drain. And when you drain a bathtub, it takes a while. Have you ever drained a pool? That takes a while. Try draining the earth. Okay? That will take a while. So they were continually returning off the earth, and after the end of the 150 days, the waters were abated. Okay, that doesn't mean they were fully gone. It means that it was starting to go down. And the ark rested in the 7th month on the 17th day of the month upon the mountains of Ararat. So, remember, he got in this ark the 2nd month on the 10th day. Here we are at the 7th month on the 17th day. Yep, and the ark settles upon the mountains of Ararat. And the waters decrease continually, so we're still decreasing here. Now, the chronology of this is interesting to me. I'm not so sure it wasn't just that the boat was resting over the mountains. Because then it comes and says this, the waters decreased continually until the 10th month. It was in the 10th month, on the first day of the month, where the tops of the mountains seen. I don't know how you can rest on a mountain when the mountaintops can't be seen. Unless they rested on the highest mountaintop, couldn't see that below them, and then started seeing stuff below them. Okay? That can make sense. So I'm just trying to think through the chronology of this. Regardless, it wasn't until the 10th month now, on the first day, that they even begin to see dry land. So they've been in this thing not quite 8 months. They've not seen a bit of dry land in 8 months. And it came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made. So, what does he do? He's sitting there after he sees the tops of the mountains for another 40 days. Then he opens the roof. He opens the window of the ark which he had made. And he sent forth a raven, which went forth to and fro until the waters were dried up from off the earth. So the raven that he sent out appears like it never came back. It just flew around until it could find dry land. That didn't help him understand if it was dry yet. And he sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters were abated from off the face of the ground. But the dove found no rest for the sole of her foot. And she returned unto him in the ark, for the waters were on the face of the whole earth. But then he put forth his hand and took her and pulled her in unto him into the ark. And he stayed yet another 7 days, and again he sent forth the dove out of the ark. So went out, and the dove flew around, found no rest, came back. He waited 7 more days before he sent this dove back out to see if there was some water abated, to see if there was any dry land. Verse 11, and the dove came into him in the evening, and lo, in her mouth was an olive leaf plucked off. So Noah knew that the waters were abated from off the earth. And he stayed yet another 7 days, and sent forth the dove, which returned not again unto him any more. So that dove came, brought him an olive branch, sent it back out, never came. Waited another 7 days, sent it back out, never came back. So he knew that, there was probably some dry ground, something where the dove could settle and live. Now, I want you to know, God never commanded him to do this. Now, it wasn't sin for him to do it. Absolutely not. He was just trying to figure out when to get off the boat. Again, he's walking by faith. He's not talking to him every day about this. He's trying to figure out, what do I do next? Do you ever feel like that in life? Yeah, God's told you to do some things, you're obeying, and you get to a certain point, but then you start trying stuff. Okay? That's not necessarily wrong. You're just trying to see where you're at and gauge where you're at in this journey. But that's what he was doing there. There's nothing spiritually significant that I see, this raven, these doves, or anything else. Just him trying to figure out when to get off the ark. And so it came to pass in the 601st year, in the 1st month of the 1st day of the month, the waters were dried up from off the earth. And Noah removed the covering of the ark and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. It was dry. So that was the 1st day of the 1st month. Happy New Year. Happy Rosh Hashanah. Okay? And in the 2nd month, on the 27th day of the month, was the earth dried. Well, I thought it was dry 1st day of the 1st month. Well, there's no more water, and then there's dry. Have you guys ever like gone to like a pond or something that's a little bit low? It looked like you could step on it, but you just sunk down in mud about a foot or two. That's not quite ready to be lived on. Okay. So that's the first state at the new year there that he sees. It's probably something like that. It's still probably muddy. Then on the second month, on the 7th and 20th day of the month, was the earth dried. And guess what happened? And God spoke to Noah, saying, "Get off the ark." He said, "Go forth. Go forth of the ark, you and your wife, your sons' wives with you." So he got on the boat, the ark, second month, on the 10th day of the month. And he did not get off of that ark until the next year, the second month, on the 27th day. And so that equates to, I say 300, and it's depending on how you do it, it's either 377 or 378 days on the ark. A little different than what you learned in Sunday school, isn't it? A little different. I'm going to skip ahead here to verse 20, because basically just everybody went off the ark. They had all unloaded. And it says, "And Noah builded an altar unto the Lord, and took of every clean beast, of every clean fowl, and offered burnt offerings unto the Lord." There you go. There's your clean beast there. "And the Lord smelled a sweet savor. And the Lord said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake. For the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. And neither will I again smite any more every living thing, as I have done, while the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease." Then we come to what was called the Noahic covenant, or the Noahic covenant, however you want to say it, the Noahic covenant. These covenants are really important. If you want to know God, know his covenant, because that's what he's keeping. If you want to understand his faithfulness, study his covenant. Why are we reading the book of Genesis? Why is it so important? Because 3 major covenants are made in the book of Genesis. And all 3 are in effect today. All 3 of them. They did not pass away. The Mosaic covenant did. But what we call the Edenic covenant, okay, the covenant made with Adam and Eve to be fruitful and multiply, did not pass away. Amen. I guess eating of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil did. But here, the Noahic covenant, which we're going to go through the provisions. This covenant, we do almost all 5 of these things every day as a society. It's set in motion such normalities of our life, and we're still doing them today. And then obviously we have the covenant with Abraham that is totally in effect today. Totally. You're seeing it unfold right before your eyes if you're looking. And if you're not looking and you don't know what to look for, that's why I'm excited about the new year, because you're going to know what to look for. So in chapter 9, verse 1, it says, "And God blessed Noah and his sons and said unto them, Be fruitful, multiply, and replenish the earth." Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Why would he need to do that? Well, because there's no one left but them. And notice it says he blessed Noah and his sons. His sons and daughter-in-laws are really the ones that need blessing in this provision, because Scripture does not record that Noah had any more children after the flood. Not there. All we know is Ham, Shem, and Japheth. And actually, it has to be that way because all of us descend from one of those 3. If you had more sons, then there would be another option to be descended from. But Noah becomes like Adam in this, because As everybody can trace their lineage back to Adam, everybody can also trace their lineage. No matter race, culture, or nationality, you can trace your lineage back to Noah, one individual. Verse 2, and the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, and upon every fowl of the air, upon all that move upon the earth, and upon all the fishes of the sea. Into your hand are they delivered. Every moving thing that lives shall be meat for you. Even as the green herb have I given you all things. But flesh with the life thereof, which is the blood thereof, shall you not eat. And surely your blood of your lives will I require at the hand of every beast, will I require it, and at the hand of man. At the hand of every man's brother will I require the life of man. Whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. For in the image of God made he man. So there's 5 provisions in this covenant that I just read. I'm going to go back through. I'm going to point them out. The first one reaffirms the Edenic covenant, which was be fruitful and is be fruitful and multiply. This has never gone away, because the day this goes away, we'll go extinct. So the command to be fruitful, multiply has never passed away. This is why you need to be careful, people that say you don't need to read the Old Testament. There's still a lot in force in the Old Testament. Okay? The second one is this: animals will be afraid of you. Now, that's interesting why he brought that up. And I can only speculate on a few things. And I say I can speculate. But remember how corrupt the earth was and how violent the earth was before the flood. It could have been that the curse was so bad that, there'd be animals just attack human beings. I mean, we see it even today. But it could have been a lot worse. Okay? God may have given them the provision that, animals will be, you're really going to be top dog now. Okay? Animals will be afraid of you. I see this happen almost every day. I come out of my neighborhood, there's these local deer. When they see me, guess what they do? They're gone. Why? Because they're afraid of me. They're afraid of me. We got a little neighborhood dog comes around, his name's Scooter. Sweet got dog. He comes up. But when he comes up to me, he knows I'm in charge of him. Because he comes up like this, wanting to be petted. He kind of has his tail between his legs, and he kind of warms up, and I pet him, then he gets a little more friendly, But he knows that a human dominates him. Okay? So there's just some examples. Now here's something interesting. God said this: you can now eat meat. Yeah, there's other dogs. We'll talk about those later. We can eat meat now. Did you know that up to this point, God had never released mankind to eat meat? Well, what were the animals used for? Well, sacrifices, like in the case of Abel. They would have used them for clothing, perhaps. Tilling the ground, working, plowing the fields. They would have used them for things. They had a use. But never to eat. But now the Lord says, you can eat them. You can eat them. And he actually says, every moving thing that lives shall be meat for you. So in this case, they are permitted to eat clean and unclean animals. Okay, it's not until the law of Moses comes that there comes a boundary on not eating unclean animals. To this point, God's not saying you can eat meat, you can eat animals, and anyone that seems good to you. Did you eat meat today? I did. I think I did. Yeah, I ate some meat. You know why I was able to eat meat? Because the Noahic covenant. Think about that next time you eat a turkey sandwich. I can eat this because of the covenant made with Noah. It's true, though. It's true. Okay, fourth covenant is this. You are not to eat the blood, though, of the animal. You're not to eat the blood. Why? Because In the blood is the life of the animal. Now, something interesting about this. This is very important to God. In the book of Acts, when the New Testament church was being established, there was a big, argument about what laws the Gentiles would need to keep. Jews, they kind of had theirs figured out. They were still going to practice the law of Moses, even though they were born again, and they understood they weren't saved by the law of Moses, but through the blood of Jesus Christ. But they still were going to do those things. But what about these Gentiles that never grew up doing these things, that had no idea what these types and shadows meant and these things in the law? Do they have to keep them? Do they need to convert and now keep these things, or can they just not do them? Well, they had a big council about it in Jerusalem. Paul was there, and you got the elders at Jerusalem there, you got apostles there. They hashed it out, and they finally came to this conclusion. James stood up. You can read about this in Acts 15. James, the apostle James, stood up and said, here's what we're going to do. Why would we ask the Gentiles keep the things we ourselves can't really even keep? But here's what they should do. Abstain from fornication. Okay? Keep themselves pure from idols. Do not eat things that are strangled. Basically, that means don't go up, if you find a dead animal you didn't kill, don't eat it. Don't eat roadkill. That's not good. That's prohibited, okay? And then he says, and do not eat the blood of the animal. Those 4 things the Gentiles still have to do. So this is still in effect today. I'm not here to try to put you under a law, but it's there. Even the council in the New Testament, this is one law that we should be abiding by. Now, do we get some blood in our food, our meat sometimes? Yeah, I'm sure we do, okay? We're not going to be legalistic about it. I'm talking about I watched this show one time. This guy, he made, he caught a beaver and made a stew out of it. And he cooked the beaver in its own blood, and that's what they ate. That's a no-no, Old and New Testament, because it's in the blood that the life is there, okay? I don't have all the reasons or why he says that, but sometimes God doesn't give us the reasons for everything, and that's okay. He's not really obligated to. And that's why blood is not a normal part of our diet. Do you go to restaurants and blood's on the menu? No, of course not, okay? Because the Noahic covenant has really kept it out of mainstream society. Now, in pagan cultures, you'll find this. In cultures of spiritualism and demonism, you'll find this kind of ritual done. And that may be one aspect of why, God prohibited it even then, is because they were doing it before the flood, perhaps, practicing and sacrificing to devils. Perhaps. We don't have the details, but that's just another thought. Okay, and then the 5th provision here in this covenant is what we would call divine retribution, or as we would know it, capital punishment. Now, here in the Noahic covenant, it is only for premeditated murder. Now, under the law of Moses, there's other sins and other crimes that do incur the death penalty. But under this covenant, as of right now in history, it's only for premeditated murder. Now, this sets up a foundation, actually, for government to begin to be established on the earth, and that this would be done through government. Government that practices capital punishment is still done today, is it not? It's still done in this country today. It's a punishment for evil doers. And it's not so much to deter people from committing crime, although I'm sure it's a deterrent, but it's probably more just as the punishment. And I'm not here to, be a cheerleader for capital punishment or anything like that. But there is a justice that comes when somebody that's not safe for mankind, sometimes that may just need to be what happens. God did it on a very large scale in the flood. He did. He did it on a very large scale in the flood. But there may be individual cases, and he recognizes this, there may be individual cases as we move throughout history where somebody may need to be removed for the good and safety of the entire planet. And he watched a lot of unjust bloodshed happen before the flood. He did. He saw a lot of it, and this is actually a great provision to keep mankind safe. He says, you know what? Rather than let these guys go loose and do what they want to do, I now give you permission in the governments and the cultures and the nations that are set up that if there's individuals that want to go around violently killing people, you have permission to eradicate them from your midst. And we still practice this today. So all these 5 are still practiced today. You wonder where capital punishment comes from? Right here in chapter 9. Why do you eat meat? Chapter 9. Why are we continuing to be fruitful and multiply? Chapter 9. All right here in this covenant. Now, this is not to shame anybody, because I was the same way, but who knew that before you came here tonight? I mean, I might have had some idea, but that's not at the top of my thinking all the time. You see, society just thinks society works because that's the way it's always been done. No. We can look back to the Bible and God instituted it. I can prove where we do these things from. The world can't. Well, that's the way it's always been done. Or mankind must have thought that up. No, they didn't. It's right here. Well before mankind ever thought it up. So that is the Noahic covenant. And there's a token with this covenant. There's a token with this covenant. Now, what's a token? It's a symbol. Not every covenant has a token or a symbol. The Edenic covenant does not have a token or a symbol. The Abrahamic covenant does. It's circumcision. Okay? Circumcision. That's the token there. Under the law of Moses, the token is the Sabbath. All right, just for examples. But under the Noahic covenant, it's the rainbow. The rainbow. Let's start in verse 9. And I, behold, I establish my covenant with you and with your seed after you, and with every living creature that is with you, of the fowl, of the cattle, and of every beast of the earth with you, from all that goes out of the ark to every beast of the earth. And I will establish my covenant with you. Neither shall all flesh be cut off any more by the waters of a flood, neither shall there be any more a flood to destroy the earth. You will never see another global flood. How can I guarantee that? Because God made a covenant that he wouldn't. You can take him to the bank. Now, in the future, the earth will be destroyed by fire. But that's not a flood. Specific to a flood here. And God said, this is the token of the covenant which I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations. You and I are perpetual, ongoing generations. It's exactly who he's talking about here, is you and I in this. All right? He's brought it right down into our time frame, our generation, by saying that. He said, I do set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a token of the covenant between me and the earth. And it shall come to pass when I bring a cloud over the earth, that the bow shall be seen in the cloud. And I will remember my covenant, which is between me and you, and every living creature of all flesh, and the water shall be no more become a flood to destroy all flesh. And the bow shall be in the cloud, and I will look upon it, that I may remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is upon the earth. And God said unto Noah, this is the token of the covenant which I have established between me and all flesh that is upon the earth. Quick inventory. When you see a rainbow, what do you think about? literally. You know, in the past probably year or two, I actually think about this whenever I see a rainbow. Never did before. But when I see a rainbow, and remember what he says here. God said, I will look upon it, that I may remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature. When you look at a rainbow, you can know that God's looking at it too. And when he looks at that, there's a remembrance that he will never destroy the earth with a flood. And he remembers this covenant that I just spelled out to you, to honor it. And he will honor it. It's an everlasting covenant until the end of this age, until the end, even to the end of the millennium. And then a new heavens, new earth will start over because there's a whole new beginning there. But up until that point, this Noahic covenant is in force, in effect. What a benefit. God's covenants are really powerful because his covenants are not so much about you and me as much as they are about his faithfulness. I know there may be aspects of certain covenants and conditions that we have to maintain to get the benefit, but there are some that we do not. Okay? I'm not here to define those. I'm here to help you understand that it's by these covenants, these are what prove God's faithfulness. I'll tell you what, through this covenant, God said something. And when he said something, he made a promise. He said, I promise you, I will never do this again. And you know what? He has kept that promise between 4,000 and 5,000 years. How many people do you know can keep a promise for 4,000 to 5,000 years? I don't know one. Myself included. Okay? I don't know a one. You say, well, give me the chance to live that long, I would. Come on. We all know better than that. 4,000 to 5,000 years, depending on the time frame you look at and how you place this thing. He has kept his promise. And I know at times we struggle to trust God, and we struggle with his promises, and they tarry long at times. But these covenants, if you really look at this and you know the Bible's true, it can reassure you that he really is faithful. He really will keep his covenant. He really will do it. In fact, when he was trying to convince Israel, and I'm going to close with this here, I know we're just a tad past time. When he was really trying to convince Israel of his love, his just love and favor towards them, you know what he invoked? He invoked this covenant right here. Let me read it to you in Isaiah 54. I'm going to start in verse 5. I'm going to read. This is the Lord speaking to Israel. Okay? They feel like he's forsaken them. They feel like he's gone. They feel like judgment's passed over him. For thy Maker is thine husband, the Lord of hosts is his name, and thy Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel. The God of the whole earth shall he be called. For the Lord has called thee as a woman forsaken and grieved in spirit, and as a wife of youth when you were refused, saith your God. For a small moment have I forsaken thee, but with great mercies will I gather thee. In a little wrath I hid my face from thee for a moment, but with everlasting kindness will I have mercy on thee, saith the Lord thy Redeemer. See, they were afraid. They had lost their land. They had lost everything. God wasn't going to gather them back. He just given up on them. And a lot of people actually think that today. Still, they're wrong. Verse 9. Here's what God brings into the picture to try to convince them of his faithfulness, to try to convince them that he's going to do what he said he's going to do to them. He said, for this is as the waters of Noah unto me. For as I have sworn that the waters of Noah should no more go over the earth, so have I sworn that I would not be wroth with you or rebuke you. Okay, as solid as my covenant of the rainbow has been, I'm telling you now, I have decided to not be angry with you any longer. That powerful. For the mountains shall depart, and the hills be removed, but my kindness shall not depart from thee, and neither shall the covenant of my peace be removed, saith the Lord, has mercy on thee. It's worth looking at the covenants of God, and this is a powerful one. And we're going to look at more covenants that come here in the book of Genesis. I know sometimes we struggle to trust God. We struggle with our faith at times. We wonder what's up and what's down or how to do this. But historically, we need to know, and we need to look back at how faithful God has been for thousands of years. Our lifetime's a blip. It's a mist. It's a vapor. He's faithful in our generation. It's not hard for him. It may be hard for us at times, but it's not hard for him. And you can take him to the bank on his word. And so, with that covers the flood account and the covenant made with Noah. And I guess it won't be next week. I don't know when it'll be. It might be the week after. I forgot the schedule off the top of my head. We will be doing it one of the WOW weeks just to try to catch up a little bit and get to where we can finish chapter 11 by the end of the year. But the next time we get together, we're going to look at the lineage and the generations of Ham, Shem, and Japheth, who then formed the first 70 nations. And I don't know if you'll be able to find yourself in there or not, but you're going to begin to see the genealogies begin to take shape all the way up to Abraham. Okay, all the way up to Abraham. So these are important again, but so we're going to look at that, and then after that week, we'll have one more week together where we will look at chapter 11 and discuss the Tower of Babel and Nimrod, and that sad attempt at overthrowing God. So anyway, we'll have fun with that. I want to pray. Father, you've seen it all. You have seen it all. These things that seem like fairy tales to the world, you know they're not a fairy tale at all. You're there for the whole thing. Before, after, you've been there for it all. Father, help us to learn, though, from it. I basically just kind of went through scriptures tonight, maybe said a few points, but I know your Holy Spirit dwells in those that are listening. And I know there's things that you can teach them apart from any human teaching them. So, Father, I ask that by your Spirit you would teach them things about yourself, about why these things that happened historically are important for them now, and what they can learn from them, how they can grow out of this, and how they can be different. And also the importance of those covenants, and that they would really testify of your faithfulness deep on the inside of them. Father, they would give them a confidence deep on the inside that, you know what, I'll take a God that's kept his covenants for 4,000 to 5,000 years over the lives of mankind any day of the week. That we have a real resolve and a real decision in our spirit and a real confidence that you are true and every man is a liar. So thank you for not leaving us ignorant about history, not leaving us ignorant about what the planet has gone through, what the human race has gone through, and what you're doing in the midst of it. Thank you and praise you. Keep everyone safe. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.